Hello friends, a very good day to you. Today we'll be discussing the inception of Western thought. Okay. We will also look into modern education and how it was incorporated into the entire scheme of East India Company's rule in India and later on the British Crown's rule in India. But before we proceed into a study of the inception of Western thought in India and modern education in India, let us get a background of what's going on in the European continent. Since the Renaissance itself, a new school of thought has emerged, okay, and gradually this school of thought will gain grounds and it will potentially become one of the most radical, at that point of time, most radical schools of thought, and that is rationalism. And overarching framework within the overarching framework of humanism. Rationalism as a school of thought develops within the overarching framework of humanism. Now, what is humanism? Humanism is a philosophy which puts the human being at the center of existence itself. Okay, so the centrality of life as a human being, okay, centrality of life as a human being is established through this new school of thought, that is humanism. All right, the philosophy, the subject philosophy, the discipline of philosophy will not be dominated by by the confines of religion. The philosophy of the philosophy of life will not be overly concerned with religion from now on, but rather it will place humanity at its center, okay, and life at its center. And this begins as early as the philosophy of Descartes, and then it is taken forward by Kant, all right, and the later iterations of Descartian and Kantian philosophy. So this new philosophy also includes rationalism, that is, the superstitions and blind faith is to be subverted by rational inquiry, that everything should be rationalized, everything should be thought of, okay, and everything should have a scientific logic behind it, okay. The logicality of the existence of life itself is, the philosophers are trying to establish the logicality of the existence of life and the meaning and the logicality of the meaning of life itself through rationalism at this point of time, and therefore they come up as a very subversive form of philosophy at that particular period of time, the period of time which is beyond the 16th century and moving forward, okay. In this point of time, this philosophy, okay, these newfound ideas about the individual, it becomes the founding element behind society itself, and it is most exponentially manifested during the French Revolution. Some even consider the French Revolution a triumph of rationalism itself, that human beings will not be subject to irrational forces and irrational divisions of powers, but rather, life and society itself will be rationalized, okay. Everything will be rationalized from now on, all right. So French Revolution, it is also of pivotal importance when understanding Western thought and Western philosophy, and we all know that from the French Revolution we draw the very important features of democracy itself, democracy that it as it exists now, okay, that the principal feature of all democracies, that every man is born free, is enunciated during the French Revolution itself, okay. And natural laws and the importance of natural laws, that there are some laws in nature that cannot be subverted, such as every man is born equal. Of course, it will include women also in this modern world, okay, but as it was propounded during the French Revolution, the catchword was every man is born equal, and it becomes part of natural law itself, okay. So this is how modernity itself emerges in Western Europe, okay. Western Europe sees the emergence of modernity through French Revolution and through the consequent changes in philosophy, and then of course after the French Revolution we see a new school of thought and a new societal development taking place in England, and that is industrialization, industrial revolution. The industrial revolution is also of cardinal importance while understanding Western philosophy, because you see the leaps and bounds by which sciences progress during the industrial revolution is unparalleled. Okay, there is no parallel to the leaps and bounds with which the industrial revolution progress. It is also said, it is also opined by certain scholars that the industrial revolution never stopped. Okay, it is still going on. Okay, and the principal idea that is informing industrial revolution is that of utilitarianism. People like John Locke, Bentham, and James Mill, they propound the ideas of individuation of society, that the individual is the most important element of society, and the individual's development is, the society's development is predicated upon the development, all-round development, moral, social, political, and also the economic development of the individual itself. And therefore, from there on follows the idea of laissez-faire, that is free trade for all, okay, for all individuals, and development through capitalist economies for all, utilitarian philosophy. Okay, this is of cardinal importance while understanding the development of Western thought. Now, it is in this period, the industrial period in Europe, that we see the formation of a British Empire in India through the East India Company. All right, and what is India at that point of time? Where is India, not economically, but where is India in, philosophically at that point of time? Some scholars have opined that India is in a state of philosophical and moral decline. Okay, Indian society at that point of time is engulfed with a lots of ills, okay, societal ills, and also this period has seen moral degeneration, philosophical degeneration in India, and the period we are talking about is the 18th century. After the downfall of the Mughal state, after the downfall of a centralized state, we see fragments and fragmented states coming up, and during this period of time there is not much attention given to the to intellectual activities. It has been assumed, all right, we cannot say for sure, all right, but what we can say for certain is that in this period the British established an empire in India. Okay, through their territorial conquest, through the East India Company's conquest, the British established a territorial empire in India. And with the expansion of a territorial empire, there is also need for administration. Now, this is the key word through which administration and administrative necessity is the key phrase from which you can extrapolate the entire history of the inception of Western thought in India and also the inception of modern education in India. It is the administrative necessities that makes the company responsible for the inception of modern thought, Western thought, and the inception of modern education in India. So let us proceed and understand how they go about in doing this. You see, during the early phase, very early phase of the company's established territorial empire in India, we do not see much of an attempt to build up a system of education in India. Why? Because of the simple fact that it was considered, it was a part of the company's policy not to meddle with the internal structure of society, with the internal structure of the Indian society of that particular period of time. Okay, it was understood that if any meddling is sanctioned by the company itself in the thought process, in the philosophy of life which prevails in India at that point of time, will be followed by some kind of counter attack. all right. So if there is any kind of meddling on the part of the East India Company in the affairs of the social life or the cultural life of India, there will be some kind of counter, you see, measure taken by Indian society itself. Okay. By now, following the necessity for administrative, you see, following the necessity for education, which is provided by the administrative necessities themselves, there is a division of the schools of thought within Britain. All right, there is a division within the schools of thought as to how administration in India should be carried out. So the conservatives, okay, argue that Indian society should be, you see, Indian society should be administered according to the age-old customs and traditions of India, that India should be allowed to develop at its own pace. Okay, society and culture should be developed, allowed to develop at its own pace, whereas there is another section in Britain who are arguing for the inception of Western mode of education, so that, you see, in India a mirror image of Britain can be created. Okay, in India a mirror image of Britain can be created. In India the administration, and in India the entire socio-cultural fabric can be, you see, mimicked. The British socio-cultural fabric can be mimicked in India, so that, you see, it now the entire, you see, debate centering around the administrative necessities gets divided into the Orientalists and the Anglicists. Although while reading about the Orientalist and the Anglicist debate, you will come across, you see, you will understand it within the framework of the development of Western education in India. But remember, all of these developments are taking place because of the administrative necessities. How to administer India? Through the own customs and usages of India, or should we bring modernity within India? Should we try to mirror the developments of, you see, British constitutionalism, or the developments of, you say, the British forms of governance within India? Okay, and therefore the entire, you see, debate is split between the Orientalists and the Anglicists. The Orientalists who favor, you see, governance through Indian laws, and the Anglicists who favor, you see, governance through Western mode of, you see, Western mode of political thought. All right, and therefore the Orientalists favor Indian languages, vernacular education, and, you see, Indian education, the Indian forms of education, while the Anglicists favor the Western forms of education, all right, and also the Western languages. And therefore, from 1813, we see, you see, we see the debate coming to a boiling point starting from 1813. Why? From 1813, it was made a state policy by the Charter Act of 1813 that, you see, the East India Company would also be responsible for taking up educational measures. An amount of rupees 1 lakh, okay, an amount of rupees 1 lakh was sanctioned in 1813 for yearly expenditure on education. Now the question arises as to how this 1 lakh will be, you see, spent. Will it be spent on the Orientalist ideas, or will it be spent on the Anglicist ideas? By now, certain developments in the field of education have taken place, okay, wherein Hastings has established a Sanskrit college, a madrasa, okay, while there is a Sanskrit college established in Benares, okay. There is also the Fort William College, which is a very important college in the history of the civil services in India, because in the Fort William College, languages were taught to civil servants who were coming from England in order to serve the East India Companies. Okay, they were coming from England as writers, and they would have to come to the Fort William College and learn vernacular languages before they are, and also of course Persian, okay, before they could serve in the East India Company's, you see, administrative capacities. Okay, these kind of developments have already taken place, but from 1813, education, public education, okay, not East India Company servants' educations, public education becomes important from 1813, because an amount has been sanctioned, and now the debate is as to how to spend this amount, and therefore the GCPI was formed in 1823. It was a General Committee on Public Instruction, that is a committee which will inquire into the important aspects of public instruction, how to instruct the public. Okay, and you see in this period the debate between the Anglicists and the Orientalists becomes greatly, you see, important, and it becomes a heated debate, and which a conclusion to which is arrived only by 1835. In 1835, Macaulay gives his famous Macaulayan Minute, in which he concludes that a single shelf of a Western library contains all the knowledge that has been through the ages accumulated in the East. Therefore, he concludes that Eastern learning is inferior to Western learning. Therefore, there is a necessity to bring in Western thoughts. Therefore, there is a necessity to bring in Western education in India. Language of instruction must be English, because from now on they will not serve an empire which is keeping records in Persian or regional languages. The subjects will serve an empire which will be keeping records in English. Therefore, the language English becomes greatly important. Also, one of the very important facts about the Macaulayan Minute of 1835 is that it is trying to create an entire social base, which will be in the words of the company servants themselves. Okay, that this social base would be English in their moral and social characteristics. They will only, be Indians only to the extent of their appearance. Okay, the Indianness will only be skin deep, and everything inside would be English. They are actually trying to create a social base for their empire in India. The Macaulayan Minute is the victory for the Anglicists. Okay, so this is the history of the Macaulayan Minute. Later on, in 1854, another important development happens. Okay, the Woods Dispatch is passed. Why is the Woods Dispatch passed? Because of the fact that it was argued by Macaulay that by creating this social base of elites, okay, people who belong to the higher echelons of the classes in India, social classes in India, by educating them, it will also percolate down to the masses. A very important ideation, it is known as the downward filtration theory. All of us have learned about it or read about it in our schools, that by educating the higher echelons of the social classes, what will happen is that they would in turn educate the lower masses, and education will spread out to the masses. But this of course did not happen, because the the higher classes within society became insular after receiving Western education. They were already elites, and now they became more elitist in nature, and therefore this downward percolation of education did not happen. And to inquire upon it, the Woods Dispatch was passed. Okay, and the Woods Dispatch also specified that there should be some kind of attention paid to primary education. There should be attention also paid to women's education. In fact, the Woods Dispatch created an entire gradation of how education should proceed, that vernacular should be the means of education, should be the language of education in the primary school sector. Then vernacular and English together should be taught in the higher schools, and from then onwards it should be English form of education. Okay, and later on there are other developments which takes place, and with the rise of the nationalist movement, other developments within the field of education also takes place. An important development takes place with the inception of the Hunter Commission, formed under W. Hunter. Okay, so Hunter's Commission inquired upon the provisions of the Woods Dispatch and how far they were successful, and the Hunter Commission again reaffirmed the position that primary education should also be an avowed goal of the British education policy within India. All right, the Hunter Commission also again reaffirmed the position as far as women's education is concerned. The Hunter Commission also proposed for the importance of proposed for paying more importance to vocational education. Okay, so these were the recommendations. You see, in brief, these were the recommendations of the Hunter Commission. So therefore, this is the early history of the inception of Western thought and modern education within India. It is a very important part of Indian history, because from this portion of Indian history itself, we see the beginning of the formation of the nation. The idea of the nation emerges because of the coming of these thoughts within India. Okay, the idea of, you see, creating a national movement in subversion of British rule in India is also rooted in the incorporation of Western modes of thinking within Indian society. And also, although it was inadvertently done, although it was done for administrative necessities alone, okay, but it has wide reaching ramifications. I hope that this portion of history is quite clear to you for now. All right, I hope that you will be studying hard. With that, I take your leave. Thank you.